It is, oh, what day is it? It is Saturday, the 27th of January. Yes, we're almost at the end of the first month of the year. I just want to start, first of all, with a little note. I was involved in a motor accident on Tuesday. We both walked away from the collision, so don't be unduly alarmed. As a result of that, I've been... Toby, don't knock the camera while I'm recording, honestly. I love them to pieces, but there are times. Because of that, I've been quite deflated, I think, probably for the last few days. So I haven't done a huge amount in terms of crafting this week, but my mojo is beginning to return. Mojo is the wrong word. I'm coming to terms with what occurred on Tuesday and moving forward. So part of that is recording this video. So if I come across as a little more subdued than I normally am, that's the reason why. I do apologise for that, but you know, real life is real life, and I didn't want to come on here all bouncy and pretend that, you know, it was all sunshine and roses in the garden. It isn't all bad either. It's just this week has been a little bit difficult on a personal level, which has also meant that I'm able to record today because I was supposed to be going to my great niece's baptism tomorrow up in Oldham, where my youngest, where Lucy lives, her mother, and for a variety of reasons, which I may go into at the end of the video. I just haven't been able to go. So the positive side of that is that I'm able to record and spend some time with you. So, you know, it is what it is, and life is what it is sometimes, and we just have to take the rough with the smooth. So, with no further ado, one thing I have noticed this week... Hello, Toby. Yes, that's right. One thing I have noticed this week is a significant increase in the number of subscribers, for which I'm very grateful. So first of all, let me just say welcome along to this video. I've read a couple of the comments. I haven't responded for the reasons I've already talked about, but I will get into responding to all those messages over the next few days anyway. But I've been told that there's been a shout out in a video. I don't know which video it is, but whoever it is, thank you very much for giving me the shout out, and thank you all for coming across and looking to see what I have to offer in terms of a little peek into my world in the fibre arts. So I hope well, clearly you've liked what you've seen so far. I hope you continue to enjoy spending some time with me. Welcome, of course, to everybody who is a regular viewer and returning for yet more of my inane chattering, and welcome especially, I guess, if you are a brand new viewer and have just stumbled across me in the great wild internet of the world. I hope you enjoy spending a little bit of time here, and if you do, don't forget to subscribe and give the video a thumbs up, which helps other people to then find me in the algorithms that YouTube uses in its search engine. So some introductions, I guess. My name is Gerard, or Peter, or Boniface. I am a former monk and a former bus driver. I live in Abingdon-on-Thames in Oxfordshire in the south of England, although I'm originally from Salford in Lancashire in the northwest of England. And I live with my two cats, Toby and Bunty. Toby has already made his presence known in this video. Bunty may well appear at some points because it's uncanny. I will sit here happily knitting or crocheting away, and they may come and sit next to me, but they basically completely ignore me until the moment I start recording a video, and then they're all over me. They want to know what on earth am I doing talking at this strange object standing in front of me. Anyway, so I've been crocheting for about 18 months, I guess, just over, and knitting for about a year now, and weaving for about 9 months, and I still haven't yet got into the spinning. And I guess in terms of fibres, my longest time taking part in fibre related interests would be as a sewer. which is probably it's in many ways the easiest to break into, because really, as long as you let the sewing machine do most of the work, it's quite easy to just let it feed through and create really quite interesting objects and useful objects at the end. So I've been sewing myself on and off now for about 4, maybe 5 years, mostly thanks to the influence of my good friend Wendy. And at this point in time, I should apologise to Bob. Bob was not shouting at me last week, "You've got a magnifying glass next to you." It was Wendy. So sorry, Bob, I do apologise for blackening your name, and Wendy, I should have known, really. Anyway, I have my glasses with me today, so I don't need the magnifying glass. Yes. Now, I don't have any finished objects, but Wendy does. Wendy has 3 beautiful children's jackets, matinee jackets, cardigans, which she has completed, and I will put some pictures in here as I'm talking about them. I mean, they're all 3 very different styles, and very different effect as well. I really like the orangey peachy one, with the frill around the midriff. It's beautiful. They're all beautiful, but that one in particular really struck me. And we bought that. We went to Mason's last week, or I think it was last week we went. Yes, because she didn't think she had enough wool at home to make that. So because the pattern talked about 2 balls, or more than 1 ball anyway, and she only had 1 ball of the colour she wanted to make it in. They didn't have, or we weren't certain that they had the right colour or the right dye lot for the ball to match the ball she already had. So she decided to buy a different colour and just buy 1 and see how it went, and if she liked it then she'd carry on and buy the second. As it turns out, she didn't need to have 2 whole balls. She didn't even need a full ball of wool. And yes, Wendy, I am calling a skein of wool a ball for your sake. So the orangey one in the middle is a Starcraft special, and it's a really interesting effect, because they are solid colours, but in fact that one in particular looks either not quite stonewashed, but certainly tonal. It has patches of light and dark through it, which is unusual for Starcraft, and it produces a really nice effect. And it may just be a trick of that particular batch. The dye didn't take absolutely everywhere in the same way as it normally would, and these are 100% acrylic yarns. We always, I don't know, we always call wool, even when it's not got any wool or any animal fibre at all in it. It's still wool. My mother always called wool, even though she didn't use actual wool, because she had a sensitivity to it. It made her skin feel uncomfortable, so she always used acrylics. Occasionally a little bit of wool if it was in a baby, soft baby yarn. So I developed calling it yarn to refer to all the different types of fibres that I use, but in informal conversation, as it were, when I'm talking with Wendy, we always talk about wool, even if it's, as I say, got absolutely no animal fibre. So these are really, she finished them all during the week, but she hadn't sewn on the buttons, so she took some photographs for me, and I think you'll have seen them around as I've been talking about them. And I mean, Wendy is a very talented crafter, and I'm beginning to get to the point with her where she might well, when we're in Scarborough, actually agree to appear on camera and have a chat. She kind of indicated that she wouldn't say no, absolutely. So I live in hope for that one. My drink today is actually not red wine. This is Merlot grape juice. It's really delicious. I saw it when I was in the shop earlier getting some food for tomorrow, and I thought, oh, that looks interesting. And it really does taste just like Merlot wine, but without that tannin iron kind of bite in the back of the throat. So excuse me a second. It's incredibly refreshing. and it's unsweetened grape juice, so it's really very nice and good for me as well. So that's positive on so many levels. So I don't have any finished objects, as I've said. I do have a little bit of progress to report on my Scania shawl. Again, as I say, I really haven't done a huge amount this week, for all the reasons I've mentioned. But I'm really pleased with the way this is looking at the moment. So this is my Scania shawl using the this is the Cloudborne Highland Sock Twist, or Highland Twist Sock, sorry, which is a very tightly twisted 100% wool yarn from Craftsy, and it's got this lovely. I'll once it's blocked, this will open out, and I think you should be able to see the. It's got this faux cable effect, so it's purled effectively on this side, and then you slip one, knit two, and pass the slip stitch over to create the slant at the beginning of each colour change, which I think you can see. I hope you can see. I'm not sure that. I don't know if you can, but if you can, that's what it is. And then it's just a yarn over in the row above for the eyelet. So it's really, I'm really pleased with the marled look. So the pattern, as well as having the repeat, it's a 4-line repeat for each line with increases, but each of the 4 are, well, the pattern calls, there are 5 different colours, and the pattern calls for 2 yarns to be held together for each of the sections, and so there are irregular sized repeats going on. So for example, this large section is 16 rows, that's 4 repeats. The one immediately before it, the lighter one, was only 4. The dark one before that was only 4. So it produces, and that was 12. This is 8. So it produces bands of different thickness, as well as the really lovely colours. And because we've gone for a very purplish lavender palette, they really work very well together. Even the very dark ones, which I was a little bit concerned about, really do work very well together. I'm sorry, I've not got very good lighting today. Actually, if you bear with me a second, I'll see if I can correct that. So yeah, so I think there's a bit better lighting now. So you can see that there are beautiful effects that the marling has. And so I'm really quite enjoying that. And it's a very straightforward knit, and as I said, there's only 4 lines, and for the most part it's stockinette. So it's only the very beginning and the very end of each line that you really have to think, which particular of the 4 lines am I on now? So it's quite good knitting for watching videos and Netflix, or as the grocery girls like to call it, Knitflix, which I think is a brilliant name. So that's coming along, and that's, as I say, that's a present for the end of February, beginning of March, as I've said previously. Sorry, I'm just moving the tripod to make it slightly less. There we go, that's better. So that's really it in terms of the what I've been working on this week. Things are beginning to settle down. I'm beginning to get back to grips with life and everything, so I'm hoping that I will move on quite swiftly now with 1 or 2 things like back knitting, and get that really nailed down and finished. So I do have some acquisitions to talk about, but actually before that I will just give you an update on where I am with my painting. I have painted all the tubes now, and they've got 5 different colours in there, and the interiors are white, so that's looking very pretty. I've painted the outside of the box 2 tones, so it's this blue and this purple on opposite faces, and I will be painting the inside surfaces with the corresponding blue and purple, so purple on the short ends and blue on the long ends on the insides. And I'm really quite pleased with that. It's a very basic little device, but it really does help and makes it easy for me to see where the different colours are, and to make sure that I'm actually using the right colour at the right point in the latch hook. So I expect that this will move on apace in the next week, but I just wanted to give you that update. So Masons, as well as being a wonderful yarn shop, is also, as I've mentioned many times, a fabric shop. And they have had a 25% off sale for the whole of January, which actually finished today. And you may remember 2 weeks ago, I think it was, I finished weaving this lovely piece of cloth, which is, I believe, called the log cabin. I call it the basket weave, but I believe there is a YouTube video which calls it the log cabin. And it's probably where I got it from. It's so long since I warped up my machine that I'd just forgotten. So that was my piece of fabric, and I've not done anything with it yet, but I want to make a couple of tote bags, one for me and one for a friend. And so I wanted this to be the kind of top half, horizontally as it were, going around the bag. And I needed to have something complementary to do the bottom and perhaps the handles with. And I was in Masons and I saw this, which is a textured fabric, almost bark-like in its texture. But really I thought that the two yellows, it's a much more subtle yellow and white and cream mixture. And I just thought the two yellows and the brown really all quite complement each other well. So that's going to be my base. It's quite a robust fabric, so it should be quite strong as the base of a bag. And of course I will have a lining in the bag as well, which will reinforce, and I will probably put, in fact I certainly will put interfacing in the bag, which will also reinforce it. But while I was in Masons, the fabric shop, the ladies in there, the owner, John, was really quite ill last year, and very nearly died. He was that ill. Fortunately, he is getting better, and he's been back at the shops and chatting with customers and you know, keeping a weathered eye on everything that's happening. But I think he is intending to take a step back, that I think possibly he's realised his health needs him to just take life a little bit easier. And he has a lot of very capable people working in these shops who understand the products that they're selling and are themselves all crafters. So if people ask them advice on this, that or the other, there's usually someone in the shop who has made a similar project or wants to do a similar thing or whatever, and is able to talk to customers about that. And I've mentioned in the past that Masons can feel slightly overwhelming when you walk in. It's so there is just so much beautiful stuff. It can be quite difficult to actually find anything. So the ladies, being what they are, they have started to move things around the shop to make it flow better and to make it more accessible. And they've created a new station opposite. The shop is kind of divided down the middle, and the cutting bench and the till is on the left hand side as you go in the door, and on the right hand side there's just lots of fabrics. And on the right hand side, but facing the till through one of the gaps in the kind of central divide, they've created a fat quarter station. And they basically got a counter and angled it so that it's displaying at an angle all the way around, and they've got these tubs and put different types of fat quarters in there. And it's a lot. They've always had fat quarters in the shop, but they've always been in kind of bargain tubs, and you've had to root down through and see what's at the very bottom, and it's really not been very satisfactory, although you can find a few gems, you know, if you persevere in that way. But this makes it much more accessible, much easier to see what is there. And so I bought a few fabrics that I hadn't known that they'd had, but I really like them. So there is this beautiful black with paw marks, I think they are. Or, no, they're flowers, aren't they? Sorry, yeah, it was. I saw one with paw marks. This is the one with flowers, yes, that's right. So this lovely black and red fabric. And I got a nice blue one, similarly little flowers. I've mentioned before, I'm quite into flowers and chintz. I actually really quite like it, and I'm not in an ironic modernist way. I don't know if I'd want the whole room kitted out in chintz, but having a certain amount of chintz stuff, it adds texture and interest to a room, I think. So anyway, and the third one is this lovely striped fabric. And I think I know what I want to use that for, although it's possible. Tomorrow I'm hoping to work with my godson, he and his brother are staying here this weekend with their father, although they're at their nanny's today. Gone over to see them, so they won't be back until later. But tomorrow, he's already mentioned, I did promise to let him do some sewing, so I'm hoping that tomorrow we will make perhaps a couple of pot holders or a hot plate tabletop cover to put hot dishes of food onto on the table, and he can take that home to his mother. And he's already seen this and quite likes it. Now, I'd just point out the difference, the way in which the fabrics are categorized is they have 4 different types of band around them. I've actually got 2 red, which are the very cheapest, and then a silver one, which is the second most expensive. And that is a very nice, simple system that actually makes it quite easy to see what it is you're buying. I mean, they're none of them very expensive, but there are different prices for the different types of fabric. So that was what I bought in Mason's fabric shop. I was feeling, as I say, I've been feeling a little bit under the weather, and I find I like it. I force myself to go out when I'm feeling anxious and down. It's very easy to kind of close in on yourself and you know, block out the rest of the world and just shut the door and pretend nothing else exists. And there can be some benefit in doing that for a short period, but I find that I need to go out and speak to people and interact, and that helps me more to move on past whatever is creating these feelings of anxiety. So I went to Mason's. Well, actually, I went to W.H. Smith, which in the UK is a newsagent's. They started life as a news agency, but really they're a bookseller and stationery seller and magazine seller. So that's basically their kind of focus now as a retailer. And they had a magazine that I wanted and a book that I wanted, so I thought, yes, I'll buy them. So I've not seen this magazine before, but I quite enjoyed looking at it. So this is called Crochet Now magazine. I've not really had a look through at what I want to make yet, but there are a couple of really nice diagrams in here. For example, this lovely rainbow love heart cushion, which is a corner-to-corner Grafgan, and there's the chart to help you make it. So that looks like something I'd quite like to do for some friends of mine, and I think that would be a very nice little gift for them that they'd very much appreciate. I have mentioned before, I think, that I don't believe that supporting people with alternative lifestyles is condoning other people's behaviour, because I don't think it's actually my place to condone or not condone. I share people's lives in whatever situation they find themselves in, and you know, I don't make any comment one way or the other, or judgment about the rights and wrongs of it, because unless I were to be asked, which I can't think of any circumstance in which I would be asked. So I am quite happy to have friends in all walks of life who have really quite interesting lives, and it's always a source of enjoyment and wonder to me that people who all look and behave so very similarly are all actually so very different from each other, and I like to celebrate that diversity. Anyway, I know who that cushion is made for, so I think I'll be making that. But with this magazine, I also got this Stylecraft blanket pattern magazine, and particularly for this Medina style blanket, obviously using Starcraft yarns. Thing is, I mean, it looks quite scrappy. I have lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of different scraps of acrylic yarns, mostly Starcraft, but also others. And it came also with this quite useful colour wheel and a tonal estimator, which is a piece of red perspex, which when you put it over a piece of fabric, even though it's multicolored, and I'll get it out so I can give you a demonstration, it can be quite difficult when classifying colours to see beyond the colours. So we think of yellow as light, we think of red as dark, but you can have a really bright red and a really dark yellow, for example. So what the tonal estimator does is that when you lay it over, say, this piece of fabric, I mean, it's not a piece of fabric, but assume this was a piece of fabric. By laying it over, it drains all the colour out of the... sorry, I don't want you to get the reflection. There we are. It drains all the colour out of the thing that's underneath the perspex, as it were, and that allows you to see which ones are dark and which ones are light in terms of their tone rather than their hue. I think I'm not a colour expert, but I believe that's the correct distinction, that the hue is what we call the colour, but the tone is the light or dark aspect, and that helps you to better plan a mixture of lights and darks and contrasts and non-contrasts. And it's not necessarily simply about the colour palette, because in most cases we don't use starkly clashing colours. We tend to use complementary colours, and it can be quite difficult to determine what is light and what is dark in those circumstances. And it can be quite useful sometimes to make that distinction in order to increase the contrast and therefore make colours pop more. So there's a lot of really interesting colour theory, which I've only just begun to scratch the surface of. I've never studied art. I'm not a very good drawer. I never was at school. I can draw things, but it tends to be on the naive side. I was very good at technical drawing, which is architects' designs and you know, orthogonal views and that kind of palaver. But I've never had any study in colour theory, and I'd really quite like to understand that, because it's clearly very important to what we do. So I hope to do a little bit more research on that, but that's quite a useful tool just to have. I think I remember Sue Stokes, Sue of the Legacy Arts podcast, Legacy Fibre Arts, and the Legacy Knits podcast, that's right. And she's a dyer now, but she's a trained artist, and so she understands tone and hue and all that kind of thing, and she's got a really, really good eye for colour, and it's fascinating to hear her talk about it. She doesn't do as much of that as I'd like her to do. It tends to be much more about the hands-on, and that's quite interesting and fun anyway. I mean, I love listening to their podcast, she and her daughter Chelsea. So I also, while I was after I'd been into Masons to buy the fabric, I went into Masons. Did I? No, sorry, I'm still in W.H. Smith here. I also saw this, which is the compendium on beading techniques. I've seen lots of videos, but this will be quite useful, because I've got a few bits and pieces, as I've shown you before, of the beading, and I'd quite like to do more of that and do it better. So this is, I mean, as ever, a beautifully presented book. I mean, all these crafting books really do seem, the people who put them together really do know what they're doing. And again, using colour wheels and complementary colours in triads and tetrads and goodness knows what else. So it's really beautiful work, and it's nice to have an explanation of all the different techniques. So I will, I'm very much, I always like to read the destructions before I build a piece of furniture, I always like to know what it is. I like to see what it is that I'm going to end up with. That's what I'm aiming at, and I like to understand the process by which I move from the basics to the finished article. Before I actually begin to do anything, I'm very much a details kind of person in that respect. I like to understand why. I like to know what I'm supposed to do, but I like to know why I'm supposed to do it as well. And, you know, it keeps me off the streets, doesn't it? So I went then into the Willow's, actually. I went into first and had a chat with Jeanette, who owns Willow's Shake Shop, and gave her some ideas about what her drinks of. She always has a special drink, milkshake, for the season. So for Christmas she had a mince pie, which I didn't have because I love the Mintero ones, as I'm sure you know. But she was asking what drinks would I associate with February. So the two I came up with were, I don't know what they're called, but there are some beautiful little heart-shaped chocolates with strawberry fondant inside. And obviously February 14th being St. Valentine's Day, that seemed to be a good idea for a shake shop. And then, of course, also in February this year, we have Ash Wednesday, which means the day before Ash Wednesday, we have Shrove Tuesday, so Pancake Day. And so maybe something involving maple syrup, maybe other pancake-style ingredients. I don't know exactly how that would work, but, you know, there's a couple of ideas there for her, for which she was very grateful. So I think she was quite taken with the strawberry fondants because they're her favourites as well. So she was looking into that, and I was able to talk with her about my friend Mike Baston's wire art, because she sells, as well as the furniture that her husband makes that is in the shop, she also has shelves of local crafters pieces for people to buy as well. So she was quite interested in that, so I need to hook them up and get them talking. And she was also asking me if I had any ideas about classes like the one-off classes like the crochet night that I went to at the beginning of December. And I suggested a couple of things. One was spinning, which I think she said she has someone who does drop spindle spinning, so that's something I'd quite like to go to, but I'm sure other people would be interested as well. And drop spindles in themselves are not very expensive, nor is the roving, so it's the kind of craft that anyone can, without too much outlay, take up. You know, it's not like having a big spinning machine, having a spinning wheel, having to find somewhere to put it, costing several £100s to buy one. There are quite a lot of good producers on Etsy who produce these drop spindles and the roving. So it's I think something that, and it's easily done in it's a fairly small shop, so it's actually something easily done in quite a small space. But the other thing that I said to her, and she quite liked the idea of, because she likes to do something where people have something to take home at the end of the day. And I don't think crochet and knitting are actually well suited to that, because it does take a bit of time. Even small items take a little bit of time to actually work up. Excuse me a second. So I suggested something that I've been watching the last week, trying to kind of distract myself as much as anything else. But I've really taken to watching videos on polymer clay modelling for charms and stitch markers and the like. And you know from my previous videos how much I love jewellery for knitting and jewellery for crochet, which is a nice way of describing the stitch markers. And it seems to me the kind of thing which, again, is not very expensive. You don't need an awful lot of clay. You don't need an awful lot of equipment. You know, toothpicks and a good sharp cutting knife are about all you need. From what I can see, there is a lot of equipment you can buy to make these things, but you don't actually need to buy it. It's possible to use things around the home. So and at the end of the session, a 2-hour session, people will have a little charm that they can then take home and bake in their own ovens at home, and you know, it's a nice little introduction into polymer clay modeling. So she's looking into, she thinks that's a very good idea, so she's going to look into that as well. And then I went next door into Mason's wool shop, and I was very good. I didn't buy any wool. They did have a delivery. It was new at that time. It was still all in its plastic bags from transit. They had a new Sirdar Snuggly cake, baby cake, and they had the most delicious brown cake. I mean, brown sounds brown, but it goes from this rich butterscotch through a kind of creme brulee into real caramel, dark caramel, crunchy brown looking, and it's incredibly soft. It's that one I think was 80%, no, was that 75% wool, 25% nylon? So it's got quite a lot of strength in it, as well as the, not wool, acrylic, sorry. So it's got quite a lot of strength in it. I'm not quite sure why they put nylon in there, unless it was just to make it plumper. It may be part of that Snuggly range. I've not checked the rest of their Snuggly range. But I didn't buy one of those, but I did buy the thing I was going in for, because what that Mason's also has is lots of fabric for curtains and upholstery, and tiebacks for curtains. And so with my new curtains, and this is a conveniently placed cushion in exactly the same, I bought these lovely tiebacks. So I've got 2 of these, and it's a kind of leather exterior, but with this lovely golden filament on the inside. If I bring it forward, you'll be able to see, I think, a little better. There we are. You can see much more how it actually hangs, and it's really pretty. And that goes up in bands around the hanger, and obviously it matches quite nicely the colour of the curtains. Well, they were originally £20 each. And obviously I need 2, so that's £40. But they were marked down to half price, so they were £10 each. And I thought, well, that's not bad, £20 for 2. And then I got 50% off on top. So in fact, it cost me 25% of the original marked price. So it was £10 for the pair. So I was really very pleased with that. So that's very nice. And the other ones on the wall. The curtains are closed at the moment because it's night time. But that was a nice little find. So I was very good, and I've been keeping to my promise not to buy myself any wool. But, and I mean, I'm not making excuses. It has been a difficult week. It's been a very unpleasant week, and as my drinks mat at work, coaster at work makes clear, crocheting is my happy place. And if crocheting is my happy place, then yarn is my drug of choice, if you like. It's the fix that makes me relax and smile, and I enjoy handling, I enjoy looking at yarn, especially beautiful yarn, and let's face it, isn't nearly all yarn beautiful yarn. So today with Wendy, we went out into town. She needed a bit of fabric and some what else did she need? Some fabric and some buttons, that's right. So we got a couple of other things, and we had a nice little hour or 2 walking around town. And you may remember last week I showed you these 2 beautiful gems, the West Yorkshire Spinners Fleece, which is 100% Wensleydale, and it's in their gems range. So this is the tourmaline, and that's actually a much better version of the pinky red that you were getting last week. And this is the moonstone. Well, I had thought I was going to make the fox paws wrap using the Malabrigo, but the Malabrigo I bought was a Malabrigo lace, so I think I need to make something different. I think something that is that structured. I don't think the Malabrigo lace is the right yarn to do that with, and if I did do that, then I'd end up doing an awful lot more repeats to make it the right width, because I'd have to use smaller needles. So I thought, actually, I'd quite like the idea of using this. So I needed 3 other skeins of yarn, so or in this case, hanks. So lovely paper bag as well. I mean, you know, it's a paper bag, but it's a lovely design. So I went back with Wendy, and while she was looking for her buttons, I knew that I wanted to buy this. So this is the aquamarine, and you are getting a pretty good representation on the screen there. It's a magnificent, well, aquamarine. It's turquoise. It's really. It's got all of these colours, the way in which they've been produced, they have a real sheen to them, even though they're 100% wool. There's the way in which they've been dyed, it just is so vibrant and glossy almost. And so to go with the tourmaline, I have this zircon, which is a much paler, almost salmon-like pink compared to the magenta pink purple of almost ruby-like colour. So that's a very much more subdued pink, salmon-style pink. And then finally, really off the scale in a sense, given the majority of that colour scheme, is this peridot. That is just breathtaking. I didn't realise how much I've really come to love green as a colour. This is almost spring-like green. It's such a vibrant, cheerful, happy colour. So my fox paws shawl, which is this design from Zandy Peters. Is that the right way? Yes, that's the right way. And as you can see, the colour repeats are different for each pattern repeat. So that's going to be the pattern, and it's going to be these 5. Whoops! Let's get the moonstone up. Those 5 colours together. So I'm really looking forward to working with this. But I thought, given that this is a new range from sorry about that. This is a new range of yarn from West Yorkshire Spinners. I thought I'd explain a little bit about what the Wensleydale yarn is. So I've got my the Spinner's Book of Fleece, which I bought previously, and under Wensleydale. So the Wensleydale breed originated in England in 1839. It's one of the few breeds that can be traced to one single progenitor. His name was Bluecap, described as a magnificent ram with the darkest blue skin and the whitest of white wool. He was the result of a cross between a Dishley Leicester with a Teeswater, and at the time was considered to be the best ram in the north of England. The breed was taken to the United States in about 1999 through an upgrading program under which semen from a British ram was used to impregnate a ewe from another long wool breed available in the States, like Cotswold or Lincoln's or Leicester Longwools, which results in a 50% Wensleydale, and then successive generations are crossed with the 100% Wensleydales to the point where by the 5th generation the lambs are 96% pure Wensleydale. And this has been done to improve the range of livestock that's available in the States, and as it was in the 19th century in England. So Wensleydales have long curly locks, but they don't have what's known as a crimp, which means that the fibre, when it's in its natural state, looks as though it's been knitted already and then unwound. It's sometimes called an S-shaped crimp and referred to as a pearl, which is odd because that sounds like a knitting term, but there you go. Their fibres have generally between 3 and 5 crimps per inch. This means that the fibres are strong and at the coarse end of the micron spectrum. There's one other thing. They have a staple length of up to 6 inches and have a shearing twice a year, which is a total of 12 inches, therefore, in a year. A Wensleydale sheep in full fleece is a magnificent sight to behold. The locks are separate and easy to see. So there you go. Processed Wensleydale top is available everywhere and is used, in the raw fleece colours range from white to grey to black. So it would be possible, for example, to get grey or black fleece and then over-dye it with a colour, and that would just give you an entirely different effect from bleaching the wool first. Now, where are we? The British Wensleydale is coarser than the American version, is the other thing. So, it doesn't actually then tell you, I thought it told me, no, it doesn't tell you what it's used in. But because of its coarseness, it tends to be used, or has tended to be used, less in crafting and more for things like firemen's uniforms, because obviously it's still very waterproof and fireproof, flameproof. So, Wensleydale has tended to be used in that. Now, I was explaining last week, it's a very interesting wool because it feels like wool. You can feel that slight prickliness that you get with wool, but it doesn't feel rough at the same time. It actually feels quite soft on the skin. So it's a very odd sensation because you can feel it, the prickliness, but it doesn't prickle. It's I don't know. I don't think I can describe it any better than that. It's really, I love the sheen that they've managed to get on these gems. And I'm really pleased that West Yorkshire Spinners are expanding their range. They do a lot of blue-faced Leicester, which is itself also quite a strong fibre. But they've started also, there's another Aran weight yarn of theirs called Croft, which is a very tweed-like. I don't think it actually is a tweed, but it's very tweed-like in that it's predominantly quite strong tones of, or colours rather, of blues and pinks and greens, but it's been speckled in such a way that makes it look like it's a tweeded wool. I'm really tempted to buy a sweater's worth, because I think it will make the most fantastic sweater. It's not cheap. It's about £8.50 for 100 grams. So you'd be looking at the best part of £50 or £60 for a sweater's worth of wool. But it would make the most fantastic wool knitted sweater as well. So I am, maybe towards the end of the summer, maybe around my birthday time in September, I will think about getting myself a sweater's quantity worth of the Wensleydale, the Crofters, West Yorkshire Spinners Crofters. But I can thoroughly recommend this West Yorkshire Spinners fleece. It's a really, really, it feels, I think that's what it is. Where I'm saying it's prickly, it feels strong. The baby alpaca and silk, the Malabrigo, feels almost gossamer light. This feels quite robust, but it's not scratchy. It doesn't feel harsh on the skin. I mean, it's not crunchy in the way that some wools can feel a bit crunchy. Some 100% wool yarns can feel very crunchy. Yeah, I'll be really interested to see this finished. I think it's going to make a fantastic wrap. I think these colours are going to work so well together, and I'm really looking forward to putting that together. So I think that's everything. Yes, I think that's everything. Not left anything out. No. So I was going to talk about something else this week before things started to go a little awry, but I will talk about it anyway because I think it's a very important positive message to hear as well. On a very positive front, my youngest niece has now advised that she is 3 months pregnant, so she will be expecting a baby mid to late July. Her birthday is the beginning of July, and so she is very excited about that, and she will make a fantastic mother. She has been an incredible aunt to her nieces and nephews, her sisters' children. They all adore her, absolutely. She is such a wonderful mother type figure that I've absolutely no doubt that she'll make a fantastic mother in her own right. And that led me to thinking, because I was watching No Catchy Name podcast, and Ella was very concerned that she might be doing things wrong, and I think it's a genuine fear that good parents have, that they don't screw up their child, you know, by doing the wrong thing and not noticing what they should be noticing, and so on. And in a funny kind of way, from the sublime to the ridiculous kind of way, it reminded me of the first episode of Peter Capaldi's Doctor Who, where he asks his companion, there we are, sorry, I thought I'd lost my microphone then. He asks his companion, "Am I a good man?" And the response is pretty much that, frankly, only a good person is worried about whether or not they're a good person. And a wicked person doesn't care whether they're wicked or not, and that's partly, in some ways, what makes them wicked. And it just reminded me, in a similar way, a good parent is a parent who wants everything that they can give their child the best possible start in life, to be the best version of themselves that they can be in the future. And, you know, what is the measure of a child's life being successful? If he becomes president of the United States or Pope? Because whilst, you know, for those one or two individuals in every generation who make it to that level, the vast majority of us never will, and will never get even close to it, nor can we in a hierarchical structure. You know, you're always going to have one or two who succeed, and therefore, does that mean everybody else has somehow failed and their parents have failed? But equally, I think the very fact that you can ask the question, am I doing the right thing? Am I being a good parent? Shows that actually you are a good parent. That is almost the definition of being a good parent, is questioning yourself, so that you're not merely being capricious. If you tell your child not to do something, for example, you're not doing it simply because it annoys you or it's inconvenient to you. It's because actually that thing is not good for that child, either ever or at that particular moment, for a multitude of reasons. And the fact that we question ourselves about our motive is itself an indicator that we have not only got a conscience, but that conscience is a good conscience. So I just wanted a little bit of reassurance for everyone out there who might just be wondering, am I doing the right thing? Am I a good person? If you ask that question, then the likelihood is that yes, you are. So nice, happy, bright, positive message. I would like to thank you all for bearing with me this week. It hasn't been an easy week, but it is getting better, and I hope that positive attitude continues forward, and I move on from this experience and learn from what I need to learn from it as well. I wanted to just float an idea. It's not going to be immediately, but I have mentioned in the past a virtual knit night. I'm still working on how that might work, but I have noticed that the Grocery Girls, for example, are now doing the occasional, in fact their last 2 podcasts have been live rather than this pre-recorded that I'm doing. And I may look to do some of that maybe towards the spring, if people are interested. So 2 things I will need from you. The first you will need to subscribe and turn on notifications if you want to take part in that live YouTube sharing, because you won't know it's happened until after it's happened if you don't click subscribe and the notification. So that's the little bell that's next to the subscribe button. That will also tell you when I upload my usual videos anyway. And secondly, just down below, if you do like the idea of it, what would be a good time or date? And I appreciate that there is going to be some difference between what is a good time because of the time differences between the west coast of the United States, for example, and Australia. I notice I have at least 2 viewers in Australia, so that's a nice encompassing the whole world kind of approach. Obviously quite a lot of European and North American, so you know, if you can just say down below if you think it would be something you'd like me to do, so that there can be a degree of interaction between yourselves and me whilst I'm talking to you, and we'll see where we go with that. So I would look to be doing that sometime, as I say, around Easter time, so the beginning of March probably would be the earliest I would be looking at doing that. But I just thought it would be an idea to float while I work on getting the technology to work for me to do the virtual knit night. I think that is everything. So I'd just like to thank you all once again, and I will look forward to seeing you all next time. And so until then, stay happy, stay safe, stay well, and keep crafting. So bye for now.